Hello. This is going to be the part two of the previous video of part one. I wanted to continue to talk and explore more about what happened in kind of the childhood and the adolescence and the teenage years that went on from year 2000 to year 2010, basically. So coming from one country to another was a very, very big shift. It was a very big culture shock and a lot of difficulties and adversities that we had to face, and a lot of challenges that we had on a daily basis and that we continued to face. And I know that so the analytics section that I reviewed before getting this video shows that there are more male viewers than female viewers, but this I just want to explore for the purposes of it being therapeutic and to learn valuable life lessons, and I really want this to be for all viewers, like male and female, but like mostly I guess it'll resonate with female viewers. So all I can say is that public school education and even family life education, there was really not a lot of guidance given at all. We kind of had to do it all ourselves and learn from, just watching others and making our own mistakes. And I think that part was very, very difficult. And as we already know, like coming from the decades, like from the 70s, 80s, 90s to the thousands, there's been a great increase or a great change in the amount of technology that we have, and it was increasing like year by year almost, with television, with TV, and then internet, and then telephone, and then internet, and then smartphones and things like that. So connectivity and what you could access through those devices, the content and material that you could access, really significantly grew to like exponential levels very, very rapidly. So much so rapidly that the parents that kind of had these devices were not able to really keep up with them or regulate them or learn about them, and they suddenly found themselves into child and young adult hands. And even today we see a lot of children almost after the day that they're born, that they are handed a screen in their hand and they're flipping through it and watching videos. How many babies have you seen or toddlers have you seen with big screens or small screens in their hands? And it's literally universal, it's everywhere. So this is what kind of happened with like children and preteens and teens in the 2000s. Like if the children didn't have a phone, they would be always comparing themselves to other kids or other preteens or teens a little older than them who had phones, and it looked really cool, so they wanted those. So all of the things that kind of like were marketed really heavily to like people who had money, like it just became so cool. Like first they were flip phones, then there were iPhones, like the newest, the latest iPhones that had came out, the earliest ones. And then of course there was Facebook in the 2000s, and then YouTube in 2005 completely revolutionized the game. I think one of the things that after the internet, what really revolutionized everything was Facebook, definitely in 2005 or the mid 2000s, and then YouTube in the mid 2000s. Those two things completely changed society, and they did so in like such a instantaneous like way. It almost took like a snap of a finger for everything to change, everything that was social to change. And I remember like we didn't use any of those, but a lot of other people did, and I found it very difficult to socialize. So when I started using Facebook when I was in like I think 13 or 12, or like 13 or 14 or something, I immediately started comparing myself really aggressively to my peers and the friends that I had at that time. And I would constantly be on Facebook checking up what's going on in other people's lives, and they would all post very heavily. But because I didn't have very many friends, or the friends I did have didn't really use it. So we were all exposed to all of these extravagant people's lives, but we weren't really living ours. And so I would spend like hours and hours and hours on Facebook looking and shifting, like clicking through other people's pictures, and their lives seemed like so glamorous, with like parties and events and things to go to, and prizes that they won, or accomplishments that they did, or vacations that they went on. And it was just all absorbing. And this was all throughout like age 14 to 18, and even like beyond. Even in college, I would constantly be comparing myself to my peers that graduated high school or that were in college at that time. And it was a very, very, like, now that I am doing this reflection in the form of a video catalog or diary, I can say that it really, really ruined my development as a human being, because of the constant amount of comparison, and also the amount of time that I completely destroyed that I could have used in such a better way. And reflecting on is so crucial, because it's like, okay, what do you advise? Like, what could you do and have done different? What could you do differently? And the thing is to always focus on yourself. And technology, like, nobody ever warned us that it would be so difficult and so confusing and such a big beast of a nature. But it truly is something that we get mirrors, and we get like cameras into everyone's lives, and at the end of the day, we really don't need all of that information. What we really need is time spent with ourselves, time to devote and dedicate to the activities and things we need to work on, or we need to do, and enjoy and play with, and things like that. We need time for our families, we need time for our hobbies, we need time for our goals. Where is all of that time? And so all of that time, I would say almost like 50% of it, or maybe 45 to 40% of it, that could have been made to a very, very productive use, was all gone. It was all completely destroyed and wasted on social media. And even before that, before 13, before like 14 to 18, before joining high school, which was again a very stressful period of time. Even before that, as I had mentioned in the previous video in part 1, that we were being exposed to a lot of talks, or a lot of like things that were mentioned about sexual health, but we never really got a very formal like education like on it, like in terms of like with like doctors, or like parents, or like people who were educated, informing us about this in a scientific way. And we just like were being exposed to peers behaving in certain ways or acting in certain ways. And it all really, really kind of struck me, because it was just so uncomfortable. That time period was so uncomfortable, just going from a child to to something bigger, and to becoming an adult. And like when they everybody was talking about that, like nobody in the community, or like no one in the family was having like a discussion about like sex and what is sex. And children and adolescents today, I mean, because of like YouTube and because of all of these other platforms, and even schools nowadays are debating on how they're going to completely change and revamp the whole sexual education to include so many other psychosocial aspects and so many other aspects. However, I did read in the CDC website and in the other public health websites that schools are required to give some form of sexual education, but the amount and the quantity and the quality that they give is completely up to them, and it's mandated by the state and not by the federal. So it's like any school can give any amount of information, and it's all completely varies. Also, that also being said, that it the amount of well checks and the well child checks that children get, and the well adolescent checks, and even for adults, the amount of well checks that they get, like do they follow up every year, do they follow up every 6 months, like that also varies. And it's up to the parent if they want to take them to the doctor or not after a certain age. So after like 5 or 6, they may not go to the doctor, or if they don't have insurance, they may not go to the doctor. So that really limits their ability to like ask questions and to, you know, get and to learn about like all of these important things. So yeah, so I and the adults that like that were growing up like at the time, like when we were children, like again in the 2000, from 2000 to 2010, like again parents like and like community members like are so busy doing what they're doing, they completely ignore their children, and they completely ignore you know, all of this whatever the teenagers are doing. And it's like it's a free world, like anybody's doing anything, but there's like no like supervision, or if there is, like sometimes it's like ignored or whatever. So it's very important for like adults and parents and other people in the community to take a lot to take lead and take a lot of initiative in really shaping all of the members of society, and like really shaping like children and adolescents, and having like a healthy and a positive view on like our own, like not only our own health but like also community health, and that really matters. So during that time when I like when like my parents or other people, they just like bought us like, you know, gifts, like got us like a Game Boy or a phone or a computer or a laptop, and we would just like have all of this media, like have all of this technology at our disposal, but we had all the free time to go like play with it and like see like how to use it and stuff like that. And parents just like did their work, so, or like, you know, we're at work, so we were just all like, we were with this technology with video games and stuff like that, and nobody was really there to supervise us. As like now, like, you know, doctors and stuff like that are like, you know, it's very vocal that, oh, now there's video game addiction, or now there's like TV and screen addiction. But before, when it was just starting in the early 2000s or the mid 2000s, like nobody was saying anything about it. Like none of the doctors ever knew anything, like none of the parents or the people, like the community members, like none of them were saying anything about it. But that's when it all very, very much really started. And it started because parents got so busy, they just like bought whatever they wanted to, or they wanted to like to get their children to be happy, or have their children be happy, because they wanted to like, you know, buy their children and get their children gifts. And so they just bought the latest technology that was being marketed and advertised so heavily on like any platform, like TVs, or like out in the stores and like billboards and stuff. And it was also a lot of like comparison, like, oh, I have my friends have this and I want this. So like all of the rich kids got it first, like the Game Boys and the phones and the laptops and stuff. And then it kind of like, once they got cheaper, like everybody got those, because they just saw that it was just like so popular, and they saw everybody was having them, so it just became like the cool thing. And the same thing happened with like toys and things like that. So the reason why is like because the children, or because, you know, all of these kids and teenagers are kids too, they're not adults yet, they don't know anything and everything. When they got all of this technology, like first they had to like all this, they got all of this time at their disposal to like learn about it. And they were the ones who like were exploring and everything, so they knew about the internet. They were starting to use email. They were starting to make Facebook accounts. They were starting to expose themselves to a lot of really, really harmful, like a lot of really, really like hard things that they didn't understand, that they didn't have an adult to help them like navigate, like how to communicate and stuff like that. Also, anything that is man-made, like anything in the world is just not safe. So like all of these devices, like they had a lot of risks to them. Like the children, like the kids could easily like make like, you know, fake profiles, and then like just search internet websites, and then land on incorrect and you know, adult websites and improper websites that were already on there for, you know, use of you know, criminal and like adult like things like that, like content and stuff. And it could be really, really very, very harmful for their age and their you know, their psychology and psychological abilities and their learning and everything like that. So there was a survey done on one of the websites that's particularly for children's health, and it said that parents and like teachers and the psychologists and doctors all discovered that almost 80 to 90% of kids and adolescents, like, they find out about sex from like through pornography and through like media, like internet pornography websites, or like through digital device websites, or like just digital devices. And that they know almost 80 to 90%, I think that's the number, know about it by age 12, or I think 12 or 14, without ever having been told or said anything by a parent, by a teacher, by a doctor. And that's absolutely appalling, because now we know that these children, you know, or the adolescents, or they may have been they, you know, are at really big risk for, like, you know, like trafficking, or sex trafficking, sexual trafficking, or child sexual abuse. But where does it all like come from? Where does it all begin? It begins from adults not taking the responsibility and the initiative to protect the community, and to just leave their children with these devices, or just leave their children astray and alone. And no child should ever be left like that. Len should never be left alone. So this is a very, very big point, that technology, being a business, it's heavily marketed, and it's controlled by a bunch of people with a lot of money, who just put anything and everything on there. And the devices, the digital devices, the internet is not completely not a safe space at all. Just because we use it for work doesn't mean that you know, it's just like the rest of the world. Like, there are workplaces where we go to work, but then there are also in the world there are other really horrible and bad places that we don't want to visit. So it's exactly like that. It's just a reflection of the real world that we live in, and we really need a lot of supervision, and a lot of laws, and a lot of protection to be safe. So that's why, you know, the government and like the, you know, the schools and everything should definitely have some form of technological like protection in place. That being said, also with like healthcare, like the healthcare guidelines, like doctors don't have any, like doctors don't have proper guidelines for screen time use or anything. Like before, like first like a couple years ago, it was like screen time should be limited to 2 hours per day, but that is a lot. And now it's now they're saying that the screen time is at the parents' discretion, and that's absolutely not right. And I understand, like, we know that a lot of kids use all these devices for homework and for learning and things like that, which is fine, but the government doesn't do anything, and the community doesn't do anything to protect themselves from dangerous websites, and from viral websites, or pornography websites, or websites that can sell them drugs, or websites that can sex traffic them. Like, we just found out Instagram has like a really big like kind of like an underground thing where there are so many predators on there and sex traffickers on there, and we see that everywhere on almost every single social media website. So digital device safety and social media safety is a must. And if you guys, like, I quit social media a year ago, and my health has never been better before. Like, this is like the first time I feel like the healthiest in my entire life. And it's because I don't have any social media. I have a completely new outlook and a fresh and an organic outlook on life, and that's what everybody should be doing. That's what we should be doing, is completely boycotting social media, so that we can actually be social in real life and combat the loneliness epidemic, which is basically rooting and stemming from all of this technology that we have at our disposal. It's literally making us into robots. We don't have a society, we don't have a community, we don't have people who take care of us, and it's affecting our health. It's affecting our cardiovascular health. It's affecting every single aspect of our health, be it mental health or, you know, all of those things. So definitely affects our physical health and all of the different aspects of our physical health. So it's really very, very important that that everybody advocate for this topic. And also I'd like to say that that's how I also discovered things about like what sex was and things like that, was when I heard people talking about it in school or joking about it or playing around. I was like, what is everyone talking about? And it was never covered well in textbooks. Like, nobody ever talked about it. And that's how I discovered it, was like through like randomly like stepping upon like the pornography websites, and just I didn't even know how I got like how it had happened after using the internet the couple of times. And I was like, this is so like being a child and like being 12, 13, 14, being exposed to this, it completely blows your mind. It makes you so embarrassed because you like want to learn, because you want it to be an educational experience, but it's definitely not educational. It's completely like disgusting and gross, and it really messes with your brain and your mind and all of your psychological infrastructure, and it completely like breaks you on the inside. So that memory is also extremely like painful, like not even painful, just like completely disgusting. It's something that I like, that like when we talked about like how like natural things are just natural, but we've turned something that is like actually natural into something perverted, and now there's just a disgust for it completely. There's a disgust for life, there's a disgust for anything natural, and sex is something that's natural. It's not something that anybody should be like disgusted by or revolted by, or be painting a very like negative or be a very disgusting, gross view about. But like that's what all of this stuff, whatever technology or whatever the hypersexual cultural stuff is doing, is that it's taking something that's biological, that's meant for biological procreation, reproduction. It's completely normal. It's a completely normal way of the life cycle, into something so like disgusting and perverted completely. It's tipping it to like 180 degrees on its head, and it's making it it's just flipping it 180 degrees and making it so perverted. So we really need to change our mindset, and we need to do that by changing ourselves first and accepting ourselves and saying that we're a part of Mother Nature. We are beautiful. We are made in the divine light, and God has intended a purpose for us, and God has intended us to be the divine light, exactly like Him. So this is a journey that we'll be embarking on, is how do we heal ourselves, how do we do the best that we can do and be the best that we can be, and create a better health for ourselves as individuals, and also for society.